Shop Chat.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, on previous episodes of Shop Chat, we have talked to basses and to baritones and to leads about how to sing their respective parts. And we always say a lot of nice things about what those parts have to offer. But here today on Shop Chat, we're going to talk to those who are experts in singing the part that truly makes barbershop, and that is the tenor part. So today, in our discussion of how to sing tenor, I am so excited as a tenor to welcome these legends. First of all, the tenor of your 1979 champions, Grandma's Boys, Mr. Don Barnick, as well as a few other accolades. And then the tenor of Interstate Rivals and Gas House Gang and Old School, Mr. Kipp Buckner. And the tenor of your 2006 champs, Vocal Spectrum, Mr. Tim Waurick. And the tenor of your 1989 and 2009 Champs Second Edition and Crossroads, Mr. Farrell. And legend among legends, the tenor of your 1980 International Champions Boston Common, Mr. Kent Martin. Gentlemen, we are so grateful that you have volunteered your time to spend time with us today to talk about singing tenor.
All the girls left me alone. Then I had a brilliant scheme how to win a college queen. Won't you tell me, darling, who told you I found somebody new? Oh, bye bye, bye bye, blues. Oh, bye bye, bye bye, blues. Are out of sight. Oh, Lordy, how the moon do shine down on them bones, 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 bones. We roll them bones. Delighted to be here.
Great to be here.
So, Tim, I want to start with you about a question I had when I first joined the society. And as someone who, sort of has a higher male voice, and I was thrown into trying to learn to sing tenor, I would hear people talk about full voice tenor and then falsetto tenor. And then a couple of years later, I was told that there's something called the head voice, which is a little different from each of those. And so I thought it might be good for you to take just a moment and talk with our tenors and aspiring tenors about what the differences between those voices actually are.
Cool. Well, you just threw me the hardball question. Thank you so much.
Right.
Yeah, well, I mean, basically put, the chest voice is what it sounds like from the like a physiological standpoint. It's basically the thyroarytenoid is basically what you're using, which is the speaking muscles. And so a bit more of the muscle, and then the cricothyroid takes you up into the high range. So basically you're using more of the edge of the folds or the ligament when you're up there with the falsetto, and you're using a bit more of the muscle when you're using the chest voice. And so falsetto, chest voice, they're pretty clear there. And the mixed voice is definitely a little bit more of a challenge for all of us, I know myself included. And so finding that perfect balance between falsetto and chest voice, and it's basically literally a balancing act to a little bit more closure there to get that really strong, pretty head tone, as opposed to the airier falsetto. So a little bit more closure. It's a nice strong sound, and should hopefully be blended really well with the chest voice. I personally don't really use much falsetto. I try to use head tone and chest voice as my main gears there, and the goal is to try to blend it together as best you can so that nobody can really tell the difference.
Gotcha.
So that's the shortest version I can give you without going too crazy and having everybody tune out right away.
Gotcha. I think I had read one time that one way to sort of distinguish what falsetto voice is from a head voice still has a lot of connection, whereas the falsetto tends to, there's a lot less closure in the vocal folds and a little bit, some more airy, breathy kind of tone.
Yes.
Is that, but your
Yeah.
experience?
Yeah, the head, sort of the head tone, at least in the way I've always learned and experienced it, it is that combination. It feels fuller, but it feels light. So it's like a light and easy voice. So it could probably be confused with falsetto for sure,
Right.
because it's just a very light tone. It's very simple to do, or should be, and but it also has that sort of more of a full voice feeling to it, I guess would be the way I'd describe it. Yeah.
Great.
More
Don, I remember a few years ago reading an article of yours in the Harmonizer, and you talked about an exercise that you did to try to connect those voices up as seamlessly as possible. And it was a glissando exercise. Can you describe what that exercise is for our audience, what you were talking about in that article?
Sure, I'll try that. For me, I was pretty much nothing but a falsetto tenor. That wasn't my natural range. I'm probably still more of a natural baritone, but I was really hungry to try to sing any place I could with any kind of voice. So I tried to play a tenor, and it was the falsetto where I started. But trying to develop that, what I'd call a body, echoing what Tim was mentioning. It's a stronger tone to the head voice. One of the exercises was maybe to start high, just to try to gain that strength. And it mainly just takes exercise. So it was starting high, light, bringing the voice down an octave or so, or whatever that crossover point is.
Right.
Is it the passaggio? Is that right?
That's right.
The vocal break really is from the full voice into tenor. If you can blend that area, but it takes exercising, and again, diligent exercising to build that strength, and like as a subsequent benefit, the control that you need.
Gotcha. That's excellent. So Kent Martin, you sang for one of the fattest ringing quartets of all time, with a very robust lead and also just an amazingly broad bass clef. How did that affect the choices you made singing tenor in that quartet? And how would a different bass clef have affected the choices you would have made had you sung with some other configuration?
Yikes. Where do I start? First off, I'm honored to be among all you gentlemen today. All great at your part. I don't know how to explain that, except that I probably would never have been able to sing tenor with any other quartet. And many people told me that too. But I never thought too much about it. I would like to tell you, I'd like to kind of step back and tell you how I got to where I was.
Sure.
I had developed polyps early on singing this tenor part, which, by the way, I never considered myself a tenor. I just was a singer, I hoped, and worked hard at it all my life. But the slot was open for tenor, and I said, sure, I'll do that. But when I developed the polyps, it was because basically, and I'm not being rude, I was singing from my butt, all muscle. And had an operation for polyps. And well, at first I tried to tell the guys, in fact, I helped them try to find somebody else to sing with them because I figured I was done. And that they decided to wait after the operation. And as fate would have it, I was steered to Professor Blair McCloskey, who was from the conservatory, great vocal coach. And he taught me how to use all the muscle groups, the extrinsic muscle groups, the intrinsic muscles would do what they're supposed to do if the extrinsic muscles were properly used. I spent quite a bit of time and a lot of money out of my pocket to do that. And it was so much easier with everything relaxed, learning how to breathe, learning how to have everything loose in your jaw and the whole bit. And the quartet never held me back. I've been a I've sung harmony since I was a little 7-year-old kid.
Mm-hmm.
So it came natural to me. I can sing melody and love to sing melody, and I sang baritone. As a kid, I put the harmony above or below, so it was always fun. This was my job, so I know I was a subservient singer. But I was also given my head when it was my turn to sing it.
Mm-hmm.
Take it. And I love to take it.
Yeah.
It was so much fun singing with the guys, and like I said, they were supermen underneath me.
Yeah.
Everybody could do anything they needed to do. So I was honored to be with them. Very
Well,
honored.
that's fantastic and interesting to hear that somebody who has such a full, powerful voice, actually you develop that voice more by just learning how to sing properly than by any kind of overexertion after you had that experience.
Well, the one thing I did do, sounds a little like what Dawn did, was that, hey guys, I warmed up singing with Anne Murray in her range, and I sang every week, every one of the albums I had with the Gaithers, I sang the tenor with them, just to keep my muscle in shape.
Yeah.
But the exercise I did on my own was to sing to a C or a D full voice, and then come down and change from full to false, full to false, full to false. And I used falsetto when it needed to be really pretty or really cool, calm. It made the chords pretty. There was some chords that didn't matter where it was in my range. It was better if I sang a sweet falsetto. But I tried very hard so that nobody would know the difference.
Gotcha. That's
And you
fantastic.
succeeded very well with that.
I'll
And
take
That's
it.
right.
well, if I could end it one more time and I'll get off the air here. I also am a great proponent of the fact that you have a nose to use. When you use your nose as well as your mouth, you aerate the resonators above and below the larynx. So by doing that, it's a much richer sound, totally richer. People who only sing and that don't use their nose, it has a pinched sound.
Right. Gotcha. Very good. Now, Fred, you sang in a championship quartet in 1989, and then 20 years later, you won another one, but two very different quartet configurations from the standpoint that with second edition, you very much were floating on top of the ensemble sound. But with the arrangements that Crossroads does, you spend much more time, I think, than the typical tenor below the lead line. So I'm curious for you, what have you done to prepare your voice and condition your voice to be able to offer that fuller, almost support under those high lead melody lines?
Yeah, it was I'm not sure what happened in those 20 years, but things changed pretty dramatically. And I was out of barbershop for a long time there, and got the call from the other guys in Crossroads, and I quickly, man, talk about an inferiority complex. The arrangements were so much different. We stepped into singing some pretty complex David Wright arrangements, and it just required so much more. We picked up songs that, I was singing stuff that was arranged for Lester Rector right out of the gate, and I hadn't been singing in 5 years. So
Right.
it was pretty intimidating. And in fact, the one thing that really helped me dramatically is Brandon Guyton's brother Chase. He pointed out there's this program by Seth Riggs, who's a very well-known vocal coach. Speech level singing is a school, or a way of singing that he teaches and certifies teaching in. And I actually subscribed to this course, and I worked with a lot of CDs, and I did some vocal had a couple lessons with some speech level singing trainers. And essentially the idea behind it is to strengthen that mix, so that there is as little, there's no discernible difference between your chest voice and your head, and you can really expand your range without having any real audible breaks. And I worked very, very hard, very, very diligently with that whole program to strengthen that mix, because I found that I think, like most of us, not named Kent Martin, you know, we don't feel like we're tenors. We're not born tenors. And, you know, so you have to make a lot of things happen with duct tape and baling wire sometimes. And a lot of times it's right in that spot in your range that you need to be loud and strong, and it's just not where you can be. So that I was finding myself in that position a lot. And I was, so I worked hard with that Seth Riggs speech level singing program to develop my mix. And yeah, I definitely, I'm asked to sing more full voice type or chest voice, and mix a stronger mix voice than I ever was with second edition back in the day. So it took a long time, and I'm still certainly not there. It's always a work in progress. I think we all probably feel like we're not who we would love to be vocally, but
Absolutely.
it certainly helped me get through the night.
Sure. And Tim, you've done quite a bit of training with speech level singing teachers as well, right?
Yeah, I've worked with one of the best guys out there. I think I guess he's a master teacher, and there's only a couple of them, and his name is Greg Enriquez out in Las Vegas. And then he really helped me a lot when I was starting to experience some voice problems, when I had dealt with a paralyzed vocal fold I still do, but that was my first step to figuring out how do I get through and how do I relearn how to sing with a paralyzed vocal fold. And then I've worked now with another amazing voice teacher in Philadelphia, who is not a speech level singing teacher, but she can do anything. She's incredible. And she's literally retaught me how to sing. And I'm forever grateful, because I probably wouldn't be singing today if it wasn't for her. Amazing.
Great. And you can Google speech level singing and then find teachers in your area. And also there's a book by Seth Riggs, I think it's called Singing for the Stars, and it has CDs in the back of it, and you can get it off of Amazon and go through some of those exercises. There's another guy named Roger Love. I forget what his book is called, but I've listened to those CDs for years, because at the end of every exercise, he says, "You're doing great." And he has no idea how terrible I'm actually doing, but it makes me feel good to have that daily affirmation.
I love that.
So Kipp Buckner.
Yes.
You are one of those people in barbershop whose name has become a verb. Because when people want a tenor to really crank some high third, what they will say is, "Kipp it." So I'd like for you to talk about, obviously everybody wants to be able to do that, but it is a challenge. So over the course of time, obviously you have a lot of God-given talent, but in addition to that, what have you done to train and develop your high full voice?
Well, I've been looking up the words that the other guys were using, because I was totally lost for most of that. No, I think the underlying thing here, now growing, I mean, I grew up in barbershop. My dad joined the Thoroughbreds when I was 2, and I just sat in the middle and listened to the citations rehearse, and I just, kind of read into this. So I started singing in the chorus when I was 14. So I just jumped on the risers without knowing what I was doing. Our local, our chapter quartet, we were fortunate to have, is the Bluegrass Student Union. So I wanted to be Kenny Hatton, and my dad said, "I think you should sing tenor." And I was actually mad at him because he made me sing tenor. I wanted to sing lead, but he knew what he was talking about. That wasn't my part. So when I started doing tenor, just to let Kent know, I've got several stories on Kent, but just this one, when I first joined the chorus at 14 singing tenor, he brought me downstairs, and we had, this shows my age. Tim won't understand what I'm saying, but we had reel to reel. So he's played me the Boston Common, and he said, "Hey, do that." And I said, "Okay." So I tried to do that, and I tried to do Gene Cockcroft. But the thing is that what these guys have all said is training is amazing, and lessons are amazing. Now, I jumped onto the risers and started singing without ever knowing what I was doing. I just sang. I was blessed and fortunate enough to get in a group at a young age, and the Interstate Rivals won the International when I was 23. And
Nice.
Then
Crazy.
9 years later, I was fortunate to ask to join the Gas House Gang. And when I went to them, I started having vocal troubles. Like I could sing loud. We'd go to Afterglows and I could rope an A natural all night on the tags, but then they'd go to sing something soft and I didn't have any way to do it. I was clenching up. So for the first time in my life, after I've already won, I got some voice lessons, and the quartet supported me on that and said, we'll pay for them. Let's get everybody to be the best they can be. And I went to the teacher and I started singing, and she said, everything you can possibly do wrong, you're doing wrong.
Wow.
The
So
Shane Scott method.
That's
yeah.
right.
They said the first part of it was they had me laying down on my back, and it was kind of a muscle relaxer thing, as Kent was talking about relaxing. And she said, okay, I want you to start high and go down. So I went, ah, and she goes, no, see that, no, it's gotta come from here. And I had no idea what she was talking about. So I had decade of bad habits to relearn and figure out how to sing correctly. And I've just been open to, like, Don Barnick helped me a lot in old school, and he coached old school, and just been blessed a lot to have a lot of great coaches. But and Fred actually turned me on to Seth Riggs when I went to Fred when Crossroads was going. I said, man, I'm having some vocal trouble. I'm not, I'm getting older. And he told me about Seth Riggs. I also found out about Brett Manning. Brett Manning does some really great stuff too. And here recently, I've worked a little bit with Deborah Lynn, who has really helped me with stuff about the, what's the name of the style? Sorry, I lost
Bel
it.
canto.
Yes, the canto style, where it's just everything open and locked, and you're just kind of producing it without anything. It's just your head is producing the tone and everything else,
Right.
and that's helped me a lot lately in my older age. So the key to the guys learning tenor, because it's not a typical range for a man to sing. Sometimes you could push and hurt yourself if you're not doing it correctly. So
Right.
my advice to you is get singing lessons as early as you can, because I had a lot of makeup work to do just by not ever asking for help. I just did it. I didn't know any better.
Gotcha.
So hats off to these guys for talking about getting training.
That's great. Now, Don, you mentioned a moment ago that your natural voice is more of the baritone bass kind of voice. One of the reasons we especially wanted to have you on with us today is because you actually represent what is most common for barbershop tenors in the society. We're looking at 4 very exceptional, more full voice style tenors, but you are probably the voice that barbershop tenor was really created to actually be. And because of that, I'd love for you to talk about, on the one hand, what are some of the disadvantages of being a more natural lower voice who's singing, head voice, falsetto, tenor, and on the other hand, what are the advantages of that as a barbershop singer?
I'm not sure about the advantages of, I'm trying to think of my comments here. Singing the falsetto part, it seemed like the classical, I want to call the classical style of barbershop, the 4 parts, consonant chords, the tenors and the baritones tended to be the interference parts. They wouldn't sing the strong parts of the chord that would let you get the overtones that you want. So you kind of had to be careful about which notes need to be stronger and which notes need to be kind of there, but not real strong, because they would interfere with the harmony. You mentioned about the full voice versus the falsetto. I can recall people like Vern Reed with the Buffalo Bills, who was a full voice tenor. Most Happy Fellows, Bob Hodge, I believe, was more of a full voice tenor. And I loved that kind of style of singing. Easton Ayres had a full voice tenor with Eddie Ryan. You probably have to pick and choose where you use that part of the voice. The full voice, there's times when you need it. For me, I didn't really have that luxury. So we had to work on particular arrangements that didn't necessarily feature that or require that. The advantages for me was I was able to sing in a quartet when maybe I wouldn't have sung in a quartet. Because if I was a baritone and they didn't have many baritone slots open, I wasn't going to sing. So I decided I want to play something else. So I just did that. I'm wacko enough to do that. I just love singing in the ensembles. the positives, I guess, is for most people, they can probably get into singing tenor. If they're not an experienced singer or an experienced barbershopper, they can try that. It's probably the easier part to learn to sing because it's more natural to harmonize, even in a duet. So you can probably start there. These thoughts are running through my mind as I'm listening to these accomplished singers talking about tenor. You have a certain range. Everyone has a certain range, and there's limitations to both of those. So you have to kind of find where your slot comes in. We talk about finding where that break is, blending the falsetto into the head voice for the break. That probably differs a little bit for each person.
Right.
But what you picked up from the discussions, I think what I picked up was each of these guys, very talented, spent time working on their weakness. They discovered that and they fixed it. They just didn't back out or back away from it. I've heard so many times that guys say, well, I can't sing this, so I'm not going to do it. You won't get any better unless you try that. If you get help, yes, get some coaching help, but you probably shouldn't give up.
Sure.
May I make a comment?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Listen to this. I had a man, the professor taught me how to use my God-given vocal cords. He didn't tell me what to do with them. He showed me how to use them to every single, and then to stretch the limits, which I did, almost to 3 octaves, probably 22 or 3 notes. But the biggest thing that I learned, he wanted me to learn how to relax first, and this is important. And I couldn't get relaxed until I knew how to breathe. I can hold my breath now, and still can for an amazing amount of time with full power because I do diaphragmatic breathing. And so when I take a tank, if somebody needs me to hold a post for 40 seconds, I'll do it. It's all diaphragmatic breathing. And a little fun thing that I learned, I've also, some of you may know that I've been in martial arts for almost 50 years. And when I went to China to teach music, demonstrate music, my class was breath control that was used also in martial arts. So it was a great demonstration because all the power in music and martial arts comes from breath, diaphragmatic breathing. If you've got that, of course, that was the first thing I wanted to do, then you can learn how to relax. You don't have to worry about it.
Right. So, well, that's very good. Now, Tim, one of the questions I wanted to ask that's kind of related to some of these issues about too much pressure and too much muscle. When I first joined the society, it wasn't used as much as it once was, but there was an old chart featuring the great Bill Myers, which would show you how you were supposed to position your mouth as you sang various vowels. And in the old days, barbershoppers sometimes would have little mirrors, and they would carry them and look to make sure they're doing that. And I would still get some of that kind of instruction in chorus. But what I found is that as I would go in different parts of the tenor range, especially higher, if I tried to maintain those positions, I couldn't sing my part. It created so much tension. So I'm curious, from your standpoint, what has been your philosophy about how you handle things on the front end, so to speak, in singing tenor?
Sure. Well, I think for me, especially over the last few years, it's been freedom first. Freedom is always first above the vowel or anything like that. A lot of times the shape of the vowels, at least in my experience, is an attempt to gain a certain resonance to match. So a lot of what's happening up here is really trying to affect what's happening back there. I think at least that's in my assessment. And so for me, at this point, I don't really think about vowels. The only thing I do try to do is keep everything in a decent spot. I don't try to sing really wide vowels, but I wouldn't try to sing really wide anyway. You get what I'm saying? So
right.
So yeah, I guess that's just me. I mean, again, when I worked with my voice teacher, never once have we really talked much about vowels. We've talked about shaping, using your resonance to shape notes to make them sound just a little bit better in your range. That could be the difference between singing, really wide and then maybe just shaping the resonators just a little bit to create a better sound. And so I really focus more on resonance and freedom than at least I try to, as opposed to vowels. That's just how I've found my most success vocally. I'm not saying vowel matching doesn't work. I absolutely think there's something to be said for, especially in a choral setting, for working on pure vowels and making sure that that's matched. But as an individual singer and as a tenor in a quartet, it seemingly doesn't matter what I do, because I'm just thankful to sing with my quartet. I can do what I need to do to be free first. I hope that answers.
My thought there, Shane, was I think maybe the barbershop, what I call the classical barbershop style again, for the major chords, the seventh chords, all those. For that particular ensemble, you try to maximize the uniformity of the voices. And a couple of things, that's where you go into the mouth shapes. You're trying to get everyone kind of aligned up. You have to be careful with that because we tend to use mass coaching techniques to get everyone in line.
Right.
But each person, unless you get them individual help, may or may not be doing exactly the same thing. You're kind of herd the cattle in there,
right?
Without being negative, but to get the uniform sound. It may not be as important in the tenor range because you're so high in the range in the tessitura, in the overtone series, that it may not make as much difference compared to a baritone or bass or a lead line, depending on where it is. So you may not have as much effect with those vowels. I still try to make those sounds and shapes, but I would go for the freedom first, the freedom in the voice.
Sure, very good. Now, Fred, I'm curious from the standpoint of rehearsal, like, for example, in rehearsal time with your quartet, how much time do you like to spend as a tenor in duetting with the other three parts versus just singing as the ensemble?
Well, I can tell you that just generally speaking, duetting has been a huge part of Crossroads' success and focus, really, because it enables a lot of different things. I mean, it's so vital to work on duetting and trios and have the other guy step out and listen, just to make sure you're singing together as well as you can. And, we'll spend every time we get together and really get, prepare for show, warm up, rehearse whenever we have the opportunity, it always involves duetting. There's not much that you can do that is as effective. I don't know if there's anything as effective as duetting, especially when you've got the other guys listening to what's going on, just from a singing together perspective. So I enjoy it. I've always enjoyed rehearsing and trying to perfect what we're doing down to the basic level. So I of course love the ensemble work, but when we can break down and really get into the nitty gritty and start duetting, that's when your weaknesses, like Don mentioned, that's when your weaknesses are exposed a little more, and you might not be, you're used to using your little tricks to cover up those weaknesses, and the other guys can call you out on it a little bit.
Right,
so it forces you to grow, it forces you out of your comfort zone a little bit, which is a good thing. So I love it. I just love getting better, and I'm sure we all are in that same boat. So duetting is awesome. It's fun, but it's critical to maintain and getting better.
Yeah.
The ensemble.
Yeah, Kent, one of the things that I have, first of all, I just have to tell you, I try not to fanboy too much, but the Boston Common is truly my all-time favorite quartet. And one of the things that I have noticed in listening to the recordings is the amazing octave locks you had with your bass singer, the late and great Terry Clark. And I was curious, as you all rehearsed, how much of that was just amazing natural lock that was already there versus how much of that was something you all intentionally worked on?
I wish I could answer that. It was kind of like osmosis. We met at Mr. Lou Perry's house once a week. And he was our mentor, but he wasn't a coach. It's a famous story that we'd go downstairs and sing. He would play a song, and we all had to learn the melody. And we got to listening to each other by singing the melody, no harmony, all melody. And then he'd go upstairs and he'd say, sing your parts. Okay. So we'd start singing our parts and hit a chord, and from upstairs we'd hear no. And
Gotta love it.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
how he arranges. That's how
and
he
then-
arranged.
And then maybe there were his arrangements, and then maybe a little later we'd hear yes, kind of like we finally hit a note. So that's how he coached us. He never told us what to do. And it was all about the sound, listening to each other. And I don't know how else to explain it, that I forgot countless times that there was an audience in front of me. I was so involved in the song
Yeah.
with the guys.
Yeah.
We didn't agree on much of anything except when we sang. Yeah, it was music. That was the master, and that's what you had to do.
Yeah.
Off stage was a different thing, but yeah, I'd get lost in it. We all got lost in it, and we taught each other. I don't know how else to explain it.
Right.
I used articulators. The guys didn't ever want me to tell them what I learned from the professor.
Right.
And Tim, I know he's aware of this, but if you understand the articulators, you understand exactly how to enunciate a word. You have the soft palate, the hard palate, the teeth, the tongues, the lip, and so it's not about mouth shapes so much as that's the bugle, that's where the sound comes out. It's knowing how to articulate it.
Gotcha.
Important study. But
Great
that's
stuff.
Yep.
Very good. Now, Kipp, not trying to make you feel old, but it occurred to me that you have won gold medals across 4 decades. So
Yikes.
I'm not going to ask you how to care for the aged voice, but I do want to ask you, how do you care for the aging voice? And you've already alluded to this a little bit, always on the lookout for new technique and new opportunities. But what are some other things that you've done over the years? Because it seems like the tenor voice, as we age, tends to be one of the first voices that starts to go. And what advice can you give to our barbershoppers listening for how to be able to extend their enjoyment of singing tenor on up into their veteran years singing barbershop?
You are so diplomatic. I love you. I love you. I really don't have, aside from just taking care of yourself. I mean, trying to. I mean, it's hard to do. Your metabolism slows down. I don't think I have a metabolism anymore, actually. But just I'm aware of that, and Tim and I have talked extensively about this because he has the same issue. But I'm aware of the acid reflux situation,
Yep.
and over the years I have really tried to drink more water and less anything else because a lot of that is acidity, and it can burn your vocal cords. I actually, not to go into a long story, but with the Gas House Gang, right in the middle of our career, I didn't even know I had acid reflux, and I was sleeping at night, and it burned my vocal cords, and I couldn't sing for 4 months. It was really a long road to recovery. But just taking care of yourself, and as the other guys were saying, get training so that you're singing properly. I'm convinced that if you're singing correctly, and as Kent said, with the right breath support, you can sing until your heart's not beating anymore. I mean, I've seen professional singers go out and, Mel Torme was in his 80s, and he's hitting a high B flat with ease. And he's just trained. He's doing it the right way. And that's the big key. And I think if you do that, and you're aware of your body, and you know how some guys are like, well, I can't eat spicy things in the morning because I can't sing. I mean, you know what it is. You just pay attention to yourself and know what works and what doesn't work. And I think that, that sums it up pretty much, I think. Because, I mean, if these professional guys can do it, there's no reason why us amateurs, even though we try to be as professional as we can be, there's no reason why we couldn't do it too.
That's great.
And use it. I mean, you got to, I think it's important to sing every day and
sing a lot.
Use it. Use your voice.
That's fantastic. All right, guys, one last question for you today. I just kind of wanted to go around the horn and ask each of you who are some of your favorite barbershop tenors to listen to? And Mr. Don Barnick, we'll start with you.
Oh my gosh, where do I begin? Well, Kent Martin's certainly one of them. Any of these guys, Tim, Kipp, and Shane. Gene Coulcroft is one of my favorite years and years ago. Vern Reed for particular songs, yes. But those are the guys I related to and enjoy listening to.
That's great. Tim, how about you?
So many of those names mentioned, literally everybody on this call. I mean, and I really mean this, like I'm watching this and I'm saying, I am literally not supposed to be here right now. I am here with 5 of my heroes. That includes you, Shane. But truly, you know, obviously you can't talk about great tenors without talking about Gene Coulcroft. You know, Gene just sang tenor like a melody, and I loved that. And that's what I think one of the hallmarks of being a great tenor is complementing your quartet by singing like a melody and adding to the quartet. A lot of times we're told that tenors should be, you know, I guess felt but not heard, I guess, or you know, and I don't believe that. I believe that the best tenors are the ones that really add something to their quartet.
And kneel and say an Ave there for me. Don't let me hear you sigh. Don't let me hear you cry. Bye bye to those blues.
But I honestly have to say, the 4 guys that right here, absolute legends and heroes to me. I listened and learned from them when I was just a kid. Sorry, guys. And one, I have to say, one time, Kent, you were ill and you didn't make a show at the Boston Common, and Joe Connolly filled in on tenor for you. And I, on the afterglow, Joe had run out of songs that he knew, and I went up and sang one song on tenor with the Boston Common. This was like 2002, before Vocal Spectrum or anything like that, and it was like the highlight of my life. Literally tried to sound like you. I think I failed, but I definitely tried to sound like you.
You mean they didn't make you look good?
Nobody could do that. But truly, I mean, I can't think. I mean, there's so many out there, but literally, I would name the who's who right here in this room, which is amazing. And of course, Gene.
You know, that's the thing. I think all of us know there's one person that we just wish so much could be here participating in this call, and that's Mr. Coulcroft. But, you know, in a way he is, because all of you have talked about the great influence he's had on you. And so his legacy certainly is very much alive here. Fred, how about you? Who are some of your favorite tenors to listen to?
Well, I'll just say, you know, in my opinion, Gene is the greatest. He's the best of all time, in my opinion. And, you know, every guy on this call has had, you know, they all have different things that have left an impression on me. And I think every tenor has that collection of influences, you know, and you know, I remember trying to sing that high note at touchdown with Don at Touchdown USA. It was such an astronomically high note, you know, and singing along with those contest records.
It's all smoke and mirrors.
Yeah. But Kipper, you know, I mean, the body and the power that he brought to the rivals, you know, that was an interesting time, because it was that, I think, still that classic barbershop era where it was more of the high traditional falsetto, but Kipp brought that different gear that just added so much dimension to the sound. It was like, whoa, you know. And of course, Kent and the Boston Common are in a class by themselves. So Kent's beautiful solo voice and power on tap is amazing. But there are a couple others that, and again, I grew up listening to barbershop in the 70s and 80s when it was kind of more that classic tenor, classic falsetto tenor. And there's so many beautiful tenors, but Doug Anderson from the 139th Street was always one of my favorites.
Yesterday, what did President Coolidge say? Vododio, 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 do. Vododio, do.
He's just an incredible tenor. By the way, not doing well health-wise right now, which I'm very sad to report. But so our prayers and thoughts are with him right now. But he was one of my favorites. Kurt Hutchison from the Classic Collection is another beautiful tenor.
Oh, watch for the mail, I'll never fail. If you don't get a letter, then you know I'm in jail. Oh, tootsie, don't cry. Tootsie, goodbye.
Bob Hodge was mentioned. He's a gorgeous, gorgeous voice. But so many different types of tenors that have so many different types of strengths have definitely influenced me. And I can't say that I have a specific favorite style, but Gene's at the top of the list for me.
And
He
Kipp,
can do
how
things
about-
I can't even think about doing, so I just sit back and listen and enjoy it.
Yes, Kent.
Can I share a very quick story about
Sure.
Gene? We're singing at the I think it was must have been the 25th anniversary of the Suntones. Gene and I are on the top row in the chorus. He's right on the edge, stage left. He's right on the end, and I'm right beside him. And we were doing a Suntone song, and we were coming to the tag. Brian Beck was directing, and we were coming up to it. And Gene, you all know how he could talk out of the side of his mouth. He'd say, "Crank it," like that. Well, he did that to me just before the last note. Well, it was a C, and I thought, okay, and I gave him a C just as loud as I could. Brian Beck almost fell down, and of course, there was a lot of dough up there, is what it was. And at the end of it, the curtain closed. I mean, Gene was my boss,
Right.
And if he said crank it, I'm going to crank it. So at the end of it, the curtain closed. Brian turned around and said, "What the hell was that?" and Gene said, "It was the root." That was it.
That's great. Kipp, who are some of your favorite
Love it.
tenors to listen to?
Oh man, I mean, all I can do is echo what all these guys said. I do think for decades and decades there were great tenors, and as Fred said, it's hard to say because everybody kind of had their own style. It's like
Yep.
it's like comparing lead singers. I'm like, who's the best? Well, there's not
Right.
really a best. He was awesome at this. He was different than this guy, and I mean, you know what I mean? It's just everybody has their own style, but there's so many. But I think for decades, really honestly, and I'm not saying this because he's on the call, the two to look up to was always Gene and Kent. I mean, they were stylistic and they were mostly full voice all the time, whether or not we knew what was going on behind the scenes. As Kent said, it sounded like full voice to me.
Yeah.
But and I basically tried to emulate them, not having the pipes that they have. My style was that I was out of there when I needed to be and in when I needed to be. And that kind of worked for me because I couldn't be in all the time like those guys because they just had this rock solid concrete pipes that I don't have. But all those guys that they mentioned were great. I tell you, another tenor that I think is typically overlooked is Bob Dalma. He was all falsetto, and I never heard him sing a wrong note in 60 years. I mean, that guy.
We hope you've enjoyed the entertainment today. Entertainment the Emporium way. The Emporium way. The Emporium way.
Ever. I mean, I never heard him had a vocal problem. He never had a bauble. He was like inhuman. He just was always that laser beam and boom. So
one of the best singers, period, in Barnick.
Oh yeah.
It's funny, Kipp, you mentioned him. We actually wanted to get him on, but it didn't work out today. But he was on our list for that very reason.
It
Yeah.
would have been great. But I've always looked up to him. I mean, because I'm 3 feet tall too, but he's 12 feet tall. So I literally looked up to him. But
Right.
But if I could say one thing about most of those, I'm not going to say who, but most of those tenors that we have talked about had another quality that we haven't really discussed today, and that's being champions off the stage.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those guys were, and they just teach you how to be humble and how to be, a good person and to be a champ.
I think we all certainly agree that tenors are always the best people in any barbershop quartet. I mean, there's
Oh yeah,
unanimous agreement there, right? So, Mr. Martin, who would be anybody you'd like to add to this list of tenors you would like to listen to?
I think Kipp did it perfectly. I mean,
Great.
there's a piece of cake for everybody,
Yeah. I like that analogy.
Yeah, I mean, you name it. Not everybody's tastes are the same. Therefore, all of our favorites aren't the same.
Right.
Gene was certainly. I was also a good friend with the Buffalo Bills tenor, and in fact, I have a belt buckle he gave me.
Oh, wow.
Inscribed to me from him, and really a nice gift from him. But yeah, I mean, different strokes for different folks, But Gene, of course, was he was the cream, and he had several different gears. While I sang everything up top, full voice, except if it was like one of the pretty little ballads, it would be a falsetto at the end to just hold it. But for the most part, here's the B, here's the C, can't sing it. Bang.
Right.
Okay. So you do it.
Right. Well,
Shane,
that's great.
Shane, I was going to say, I'd love to just throw in a couple tenors from the modern era, because I know all of us look to the heroes, but from when we were starting out and stuff like that. But man, I'd love to just compliment some tenors, because I really wanted to take some of the brilliance and sound of tenors like Royce Ferguson and Drew Kirkman and Tim Boersma and I mean, just really great tenor singers that just had just fantastic sound that added to their quartets. So,
that's fantastic.
And there are plenty more, but those are just a few that came to my mind as I was thinking about more recent years.
Yeah.
Both of the tenors and ringmasters.
Right.
Switch up, but Kipp and Rasmus both are amazing.
Oh,
that's
amazing.
great.
Yeah, those tons.
Well, guys, I have to tell you today, if you were a basketball fan, this is like getting to interview Bill Russell and Michael Jordan and Oscar Robertson and LeBron James and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. This has just been an absolute thrill for me and for all of us at Shop Chat. So thank you so much for sharing so much of your expertise with our audience. Just can't thank you enough for that. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this exciting episode of Shop Chat.
Shop Chat. Shop